So I read a post about loneliness this morning that I think you'll want to hear. It says loneliness isn't fixed by hobbies or just go out advice, stop it. I keep hearing the same advice to lonely people. Just pick a hobby, go meet new people, stop being lazy. I did that all this year and it didn't work. Why? Because that style of messaging misses the main issue. Hobbies don't replace human connection, simple. They can keep you busy, but they don't provide meaningful interaction. You can spend all day painting, running, or learning the ukulele and still feel lonely because no one really sees you. And he continues to go on about this. Now, I can definitely see some truth in this, right? I think, sometimes maybe it isn't as streamlined as you just do these things and then, people just start coming your way, people just start coming and talking to you. And from my experience, over the last 3, 4 years, where I had just sort of been living in a flat, working on my own sort of stuff. At the time, I was working on my business. Now I'm obviously working on this YouTube stuff and my game development. It pretty sort of lonely, I guess. I mean, in terms of friends, I've got maybe like one or two, right? Like a couple. I mean, at the moment, I'm sort of living at home, but the point being is that, like, especially in that period there, like, I didn't really speak to many people. I was just working on my own stuff, and that was that, right? I was going to the gym. I was, sort of working on meaningful projects, and that was that. Now, what I will say is, I can definitely see what this guy is talking about, right? Because I think just doing hobbies for the sake of doing hobbies and assuming that that's just gonna get you meeting new people, that might not always be the case. However, I don't actually see this as entirely correct either, because I think, well, for example, right, when I go to the gym, which I go to the gym maybe 4 times a week, I can quite easily go and maybe just have a bit of a chat with someone, right? If I really want to, like, for example, I don't know, if a guy is, I don't know, doing some bench press or dumbbell press, I could probably start a pretty easy conversation by going over there and maybe just sort of assisting or like spotting him or something. Whether he wants it or not, it's just a bit of a casual thing, right? Like, so because at the end of the day, I think stuff like this, right? Content like this, look, it's clear this guy is sort of, in a lot of pain with this, but at the same time, it's like, if you're not going to be willing to put in the work to actually make some of these things work and just complain, then that's that, right? Because what I do see a lot of on Reddit and obviously in this sort of feed is just people complaining all the time. And the thing is although it feels good to complain, at the same time you get nowhere by doing it. Now, what have I been doing, or what did I do, when I have been and was sort of in those lonelier periods? First of all, yeah, I know it sounds annoying, but I was just working on myself. I was just doing things that were meaningful to me, right? Working on meaningful projects, because I think a lot of people nowadays, they don't really have any sense of direction, right? They're just doing things for the sake of doing things and not simply because it's an interest of theirs. And I'll tell you what, you're going to be far more interesting of a person if you're actually working towards something that's meaningful to you. And I mean like genuinely working towards it, because that alone is at least just going to give you something to direction. And the second thing is like, look, if you want to go and speak to people, like, at the same time, it's like, okay, well, for example, right, the gym, that's going to be a pretty easy place to go and speak to people and, have conversations. You just need to go and have them. And at the same time, like, obviously, loneliness is going to be very different for a lot of people, right? Because some people want lots of friends and lots of people to validate them, which is a problem in itself, because you shouldn't have to get the validation and feelings of other people in order for you to feel that you are actually validated and worthy of a person. And then other people see just having like one or two friends as fine, right? So for me, like, I have like one, two, maybe sort of like a couple friends, and I'm happy with that. Like, I don't need any more people, and like, I don't need validation from other people either, which is why I don't really need as many sort of friends and such. But a lot of these people will, like, out there will so heavily rely on other people to give them validation, are so heavily relying and waiting for other people to message them and call them. And I mean, I know people are different, but I just think at the same time, like if you are so heavily reliant on other people having to validate you, on other people having to message you and such, like for example, like, I mean, I don't really get messaged or called at all unless it's by family or maybe by the occasional friend, but that's rare. But I don't really care because I'm just doing my own thing, and at the same time, it's like want to speak to people, I can go and do that. But I'm not going to sit here. I'm not going to complain all the time. But also at the same time, it's just, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I think with this video, like I do have mixed opinions on this because on one side, I can sympathize in the sense of right, maybe it isn't necessarily as straightforward. But on the other side, I do also say that look, first of all, you can either do something about it or you don't. Second of all, actually going like for example the gym, right? Going to the gym, working yourself and speaking to other people that are also doing the same thing. Like you either speak to people or you don't, because people aren't just going to be magnetically drawn to you, not as a guy anyway. So if you want to go and speak to people, you should go out and do that. And then yeah, just having a sense of direction. That's been a really big thing for me, because if you have a sense of direction, you're working on something meaningful to you, then all of a sudden when it does come to conversation, when it does come to speaking to people, maybe making friends with people, all of a sudden you've got more to talk about, you're a more interesting person, and just generally speaking, people are going to be a bit more interested in you compared to if you're just super desperate to, go out and see anyone to the point where you don't really have much to say about yourself. So let me know what you think about this. Honestly speaking, I have mixed opinions about this. I can see stuff on both sides, and I'd like to know your thoughts on this. But that said, hope you enjoyed this video. I'll chat soon.